Hey, Kevin here. I am about to go show you my motorhome. My shop is a little bit of a crap hole with stuff everywhere. And as I've tore that motorhome apart and the donor motorhome, I pretty much haven't thrown anything away. So crap is piled up, and considering how tight the quarters are in my shop, it looks like a junkyard. So before I totally pollute your minds with that I live in a squalor, this is the view from my porch. Ain't it beautiful? Now as soon as I get that motorhome done, you bet I'm going to clean it up and cart a bunch of crap to the dump, take a bunch of metal to the scrapyard. But thank God I haven't done that yet, because a perfect example is after my first test drive, I realized I don't like the way it handles, and I'm going to take this. I've taken the sway bar off of the Georgia Boy. I'm walking over my shop now. Georgia Boy donor motorhome. And if I would have hauled it off to the scrapyard, the old frame and everything like I was planning to 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't be able to rob parts off of it. So that's why I'm almost paranoid to throw things away, as much crap as I've had apart. And I've had just about everything apart on this motorhome at the same time. And it's coming together, and I just might accidentally have a completely together motorhome in a couple weeks. It's on the road. It's already been inspected. I didn't like I said, didn't like how I handled going down the road. Yesterday and today I broke down the 6 9R 22.5 tires and put new tires on the rims, and tomorrow I will tackle putting the sway bar in and doing a few other things while I got the front tires off. So anyways, I told you my shop is a little bit of a crap hole. It's dirty, but it's just the way it is. But there's the motorhome. I'm going to give you a quick update. Last fall we had a stretch of a couple good days, and I hurried to try to get it painted, and thank God I ran out of time, because I never got anywhere near. The green stuff on it is spot putty, where I just touched up some spots. Here's an example of some crazing. It's where the fiberglass is cracked from heat, and this part's not done yet, just a little patch here. But this is where I ground it down and put a tight coat of Bondo on it, and it really turned out nice. I think it still needs to be finished, but you can't see any of the cracks. And I've done a few boats that way, and I've never had a problem. So the bodywork's pretty much been put off for a while. So I was in the process of doing it. So I did do around the front here and the bumpers. I did that before I took it to get inspected, because I wanted to paint behind the bumpers. So I took the bumpers off and painted everything. That way I don't take it apart again. You see I got the new 9R 22.5s on the rear here. She looks pretty sharp. Those are Toyo M170s. They're a 12-ply tire. There's old George. Hey George! George is out here helping me. Here's a perfect example of some of the crazing. This is damn it. Hopefully you can see the cracks. That's one of the hatch doors I haven't done yet. But right above here was exactly the same way, but it's fared out pretty good and looks pretty good. One of the things of interest maybe is I've replaced the Travco booster with a Bosch Hydro Max hydraulic boost system. Everything's used to come off the donor motorhome, so I did experience some problems right off the bat with it, and I've had to tear the booster apart, and I've got a separate video on that. Surprisingly enough, a problem I had was a steering linkage. I broke the cable, I cut the cable, whatever, when I took everything apart. Focus, you darn thing. And I couldn't find a cable without, I mean, I drove to Dallas, that's 90 miles away, to God's gift of cable making, and they couldn't make me a cable. And I'd never imagined there being such a problem just with a simple cable with a couple clevises on it. Anyways, so what I did is I built mechanical linkage. And I built a little bell crank there. It comes from the Georgia Boys throttle, which I've installed. Comes across above the Hydromax brake system to a bell crank, and from the bell crank it goes into the injection pump back there. And it turned out a lot better than I thought. I'm really happy with it. Another problem I ran into was the tranny cooler. Problem I ran into is the tranny cooler wouldn't allow me to put the grill assembly on. I actually cut it back quite a bit. If you can see inside there where I've cut the fiberglass back, and it still wouldn't work. So I abandoned the Georgia Boys tranny cooler, and I went with a Dodge Diesel's tranny cooler that I had sitting here in the shop. It sits in the passenger side wheel well forward of the tire behind the frame. It's just a tranny cooler that's nestled in here, and I got the cooling lines coming off the engine and the transmission lines coming into it, and this piece of frame kind of protects it, and I'll probably put a little bit of a shield up here to also help protect it. I'm installing a sway bar on the front axle, and I'll finish that tomorrow. Got to drill some holes in the frame, put a bracket on. As with everybody else with these old Dodges, I did install my engine battery underneath the step coming into the motorhome. Off to the side here, you'll see a isolation switch that's hooked to the negative side of the battery. Turn that switch off, kills electricity to all of the engine side of the wiring. Then underneath the floor here, you'll see a battery disconnect. That will kill I've got the house bank, which is underneath the bunk, and the engine bank hooked together through that manual disconnect. And next to it is a continuous duty solenoid that when I'm running the engine, it will charge the house bank through that solenoid. And then next to that's I think it's a 100 amp circuit breaker for in case anything shorts out between the two. And over on this side we got the starter relay. There was old George. He's got to be in the movies. Behind George there is a step I built, and that step covers where the transmission had to sit a little bit further back, and I had to cut out the cockpit a little bit. You'll see the exhaust going over it right there, and I got some heat tape on it. I cut the whole back out, and when I went to put it back together, I had to put a jack underneath behind the front tires and jack the body back into place because the door was hanging up. But I was able to weld a piece of steel in between there. Then I ran 3/4 inch plywood, bolted it to the back side, and the steel actually did the job as far as giving it the strength back, and then the plywood added to it. Underneath the dash in front of the passenger seat, I had to cut out some of the firewall to make room for the radiator and the intercooler, and I've pieced all that back together. And where you see bare metal, I will build a little shelf there to put a cell phone or whatever else on. And I did a little bit of the same thing to the driver's side floor, and I haven't closed it in completely. And you will see a lot of terminal blocks throughout this motorhome. There's that black one, there's a white one behind it, and up here on the steering bracket there's a couple more, and right on top of there is the Georgia Boys fuse box, which I've got wired in. It's not mounted yet, but it's going to be mounted in that spot because I really like being able to sit there in the driver's seat and troubleshoot the fuses. In the process of doing the wiring, I had to marry the Cummins Georgia Boy wiring with the Travco, and that's what these terminal blocks allowed me to do. Everything's working great. All my gauges are working. Speedometer's not hooked up. I need to get the right gears for the speedometer cable. Put a floor in yesterday, day before yesterday. The lights kind of got it. It's hard to see. I don't care much for the floor. It's the second floor I put in. I still might put another floor in. We painted the cabinets at the same time, right before I put the floor in. This right here is the couch / bunk that I reupholstered myself. And I'm not an expert at doing upholstery work, but I'm pretty proud of it. And coming on back, I started to make new countertops. They're made out of 3/4 inch plywood. I got another piece of 3/4 inch plywood underneath it, going along the edges. And I've got some 70s era laminate to go on top. I'll show you that in a minute. And part of doing the wiring, I totally moved all the wiring for the house to the back here. Underneath the bunk would be my battery bank. Right now I just got one battery in there just to be able to use things. And then I've got the behind this box here is fuse box and terminal blocks and all that to wire everything together. And I just come off of there with wiring that goes to wherever. And some of this wire is for a future security system, DVD. I got HDMI, I think, and a few other things run up in there. Oh, and we put in a Max Air fan a couple days ago, or last weekend I guess it was. It's one of the fancy ones with the little thermostat goes on the wall and they'll mount remote control, and I've got a new air conditioning unit installed. I'll be moving along probably pretty quick on the interior here as soon as I get that sway bar taken care of. I removed the fuel tank. I cleaned it out with some muriatic acid. Then right here on the bottom you'll see I welded a pipe fitting, a 3/8 pipe fitting with the nipple coming off and a line coming off of that. And you'll see I got an inline filter, and then I got an electric fuel pump to push the fuel up to the engine. I'm still getting a little debris in the filter, but I'll just keep clearing that out. Now, I run my fuel lines off the bottom of the tank, and I don't allow there to be a standpipe or anything to allow debris to accumulate in the tank. I'd rather get it out of the tank and deal with it in small amounts at a time than being stuck on the side of the road with a tank stuck on the side of the road with a tank full of nasty fuel that has gotten sloshed around and it's caused me serious problems. So that's how I did my fuel tank. That's pretty much my Travco update. It's not painted yet. I'm rolling and tipping 2-part Interlux Perfection on it. It's a good quality boat paint, and hopefully I will have that completed in a little, hell, that's last on my list though. But she's on the road. The engine runs good. Some people are concerned about my 3.31 to 1 gear ratio and my 38-inch tall 22.5 tires, but it's got plenty of get up and go. I haven't really been able to test the top end because I really didn't like how she steered when I took it for the only trip I've taken it down the road so far. But we had a terrible crosswind that day, and my tires I checked the date code on these old tires that were on the motorhome, and some of them were actually 20 years old and 2 of them were 14 years old. So the new tires in the sway bar, I'm going to try it again. Thanks for watching. I hope this video turns out.